So don't tell anybody I got that wrong.
This is Disruptor Diaries, Healthcare Education Innovation Unleashed. Your hosts are nursing professional development specialists with years of dynamic NPD experience. This podcast aims to promote and cultivate inclusive learning environments, giving healthcare team members a platform to disseminate their best practices. Join us as we explore the complexities of healthcare education, celebrate success stories, and address the barriers that often hinder effective learning. Together, we will uncover valuable resources and tools to help healthcare professionals adapt, grow, and excel in a dynamic environment. Whether you are a seasoned practitioner, an emerging healthcare professional, or an educator in the field, this podcast is designed to inspire and inform you on your journey through the ever-changing world of healthcare. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the hosts and guests. They do not reflect the views or positions of any organizations or institutions with which the hosts or guests are affiliated. This podcast is intended for inspirational purposes only.
We are really, I don't even know the word. Are we excited? Are we nervous to do our first podcast recording with a video component? It's the first time we've all been in a room physically together.
Yeah.
We have had a meal together today, and we picked up donuts on the way out of the Venetian. And don't mind us, we will be eating, snacking during today's conversation. We're taking a really unique spin for this episode, and the fact that we are physically spending time together, contributing to a sense of community, which will be a topic and a theme that may come out of this conversation today, but ultimately a sense of belonging and how important and valuable that is to who we are as individuals and as professionals, and specifically within the nursing profession. So this is a totally different spin on how we've ever approached conversation before. So it may feel clunky, it may flow seamlessly. We have no idea what to expect. We're just really excited to see where the conversation goes. And the approach that we have is a good old hotel ice bucket.
Yeah, but explain why we're doing this context to our pajamas, because
Please explain.
Is there a better sense of belonging than when you get invited to a sleepover with all of your friends and you sit around and do all of the sleepover stuff, like asking each other questions, eating a ton of food till you get sick.
Let's not do that.
We make no promises, but we will turn the video off if we do end up getting sick from eating all these delicious treats here. But we chose the sleepover theme just because, when we were kids, again, when you were at a sleepover, there was really no better feeling if you were in with the group. But then when you were in a sleepover and you were the person not in the group, there was really no worse feeling in the world. And we kind of wanted to lend that context to why it's so important to have a sense of belonging, both personally and professionally.
So we are going to be drawing questions. We've all written individual questions. We don't know what they are, and they're all going to be in here for us to answer. Some are really about community and belonging, and others are just sort of a get to know you type question. We want to share ourselves a little more with all of you.
Do you want to do the honors?
Indeed.
First question.
All right. Oh, I wrote this one. What were you most excited about for our PJ party?
Ooh.
I'm wearing donut pajamas, so obviously I was most excited about that.
And we did not plan to have donuts with.
Happened organically.
Yes.
That happened
Happy
organically. That was
Yes.
a happy accident.
What were you excited about, Rachel?
Just being in the same room with you all, because it's so, I know we do this virtually, we kind of can feel the energy together through the screen, but it's just different when you're sitting next to each other and laughing and giggling, and this is so fun. And I was just thinking, as you're saying, it might be a little clunky, just this perfectly imperfect situation, and just, I think vulnerability goes along with belonging, and so this is very vulnerable to be in our pajamas, to be eating, to be talking, trying lots of new things for the first time, but yeah, I'm just really excited, and to try the donuts too, of course. How about you, Tabitha?
And I think for me, very much like you, just being able to come together. We interact, we meet together as a team several times a month. We're on the podcast, but we rarely get to come together in person, maybe once a year.
Yeah.
So as you mentioned, we're at convention, AMPD Aspire Convention in Las Vegas, and I think we can all agree that when we've gone to conventions in the past, it's kind of that booster shot, if you will. You come back energized with all these great ideas, and you've been a part of a community. And that's really important to kind of give you that passion and that fire back to what we do every day.
It's all about connection. That is truly what I find so valuable and impactful about a convention experience, and then having this intentional opportunity to truly physically be in the same space together and share conversation in a way that we haven't had a chance to really do via a podcast episode to date is really exciting.
I was really excited to see how our personalities came through in our pajamas.
Oh, yes.
Right, that's something I've been thinking a lot about, because when we decided we were gonna have a pajama party, I was like, oh, I should go get some cute pajamas to wear. It's like, that's not me at all. I promised Jenna I'd keep my pants on.
Yeah.
So, and I wore my llama socks. So I was just excited to see like how everyone approached this, from like super organized and like really put together to what can I fit in my carry-on, and that's what I'm gonna show up in.
Right.
So
I love it.
I love that too. That reminds me, so on the way here, somebody that sat next to me also is coming here for the first time at the convention, and I said, we talked a little bit, and she's a newer NPD educator, and she shared with me, she's a little nervous, excited, and I said, you're here to find your people. And I was just thinking about us and how like that's how we met and got connected, and here we are doing this now. It's really fun. So I just reassured her, I'm like, you're gonna find your people. So because it can feel isolating too, right? When she's the only one in her, I think, facility or area, and she's new at it, and it's like, okay, I'm just going in this, I'm not quite sure, and I'm like, you're gonna feel, your people, and you're ready to go after this week. So I'm super excited for her.
Sure.
Pass it around.
Personal question. If you were not a nurse, what would your career be?
Oh.
I think Jen's really excited to answer this
question.
I think we all know I would be like a food critic or the female Anthony Bourdain, because my favorite thing on the planet is to travel and eat when I travel. As a matter of fact, I just got back from Scotland, and we were just talking about what we would like to do in our next life, and I was like, I would like to do this. I would like to travel to Scotland and eat weird things like haggis and realize it's actually delicious.
It is. I love it.
Yes. So that would be me.
Great answer. What do you think?
Well, I would have to say, if most people know me, they know I love reading or watching crime stories. And
I don't think I did know that.
legal shows.
Yeah.
And so I would have to probably say an attorney.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
Nice.
yes.
Criminal, like defense or
yes.
prosecutor?
Yeah. Probably prosecuting side,
Okay,
but
all right.
either way, but definitely the criminal side.
All
Very
right.
intriguing. Kind of that whole CSI.
Yes.
thing.
Yeah.
Love
Yeah.
it.
Love that. Did you ever do forensic nursing?
I did not.
Not too late.
Not
too late. That's true.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh, what would I do? I've been asked this question before, so this was my question. So I'm gonna ask this group. This is so good. I always have to think about it. I love thrifting, and I think what I would do is open up either I would consult for somebody and like thrift shop for them, maybe decorate their home or find outfits for them, open up a store, but I just love, it brings me so much joy. So, and it's just like such a treasure hunt. So I think that's what I would do.
I initially went to school to be a chemical engineer.
Wow.
Oh,
I can
wow.
see
I did
that.
not know that.
I can see that.
Yeah, and I hated inorganic chemistry, and so I was like, I don't want to do that. But I love organic chemistry. I think if I had made it to organic chemistry, I would be a chemical engineer right now.
Well, we're glad you didn't.
Yeah.
Because we might not know you.
But I love organic chemistry. Like, it just the And so I think that I would either be a professional student, because I also just can't seem to stay out of school.
I thought you were going to say
I
puzzle
think we're
maker.
all in
Or-
that.
Yeah, right?
Professional puzzle maker. Put her together.
Yeah, but like something, I don't know, like just where you're given this chemical problem and you have this, you're trying to get to this solution and you have to figure it out and it's all theoretical.
Mhm.
But if you can do a good job, you can get there.
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome.
So it's so interesting because Rachel, I actually had it was called Russell Rehab Business when I lived in
You did?
Tennessee. So I had a booth at an antique shop, I thrifted, I rehabbed furniture, like that was my
Fun.
passion for so many years. And since we moved to Ohio in 2017, have 2 children, that side of me has not shown through. So I definitely see it. Like I have a really hard time answering this question because there's so much creative flair that I would want to do, but then also the not polar opposite, but other end of the spectrum. I too was an engineering major before I committed to nursing. And I did, like Vanessa and I did like know this about each other. I remember we had dinner one time when we were both in Nashville. And we learned this about one another, and there are so many things that her and I have in common that I'm also like, I'm not surprised.
I know.
But I
Me
don't know if I would
neither.
be an engineer today. So it's so hard for me to pinpoint because it's like, ooh, yeah, that was me, and that was me too. And it's just like this multifaceted thing. Like, ooh, I would love to be a food critic or a sommelier. Like, can I go to sommelier school? That would be fun. So I think it's more of let me roll the dice and just see what option there is, and I'll try it out. And if it doesn't work, I'll try something different. But that's a manifesting generator.
I was like, can I bring in human design? Please, yes, absolutely. Okay, I gotta talk about human design for just a second. Okay, human design, study of like how we're all different, like the science of individualization basically. And it takes lots of different ancient modalities with like astrology and the I Ching and the gene keys, and then combines it with some modern enduring knowledge that pulls together personality, your strengths, challenges you have this lifetime, and gifts. And Jill, Tabitha, and Vanessa are all what's called a manifesting generator, and they are meant to do multiple things this lifetime. You're not meant to just do one thing. And so hearing you say that, I'm like very manifesting generator energy. But I love that because, and I love human design because it gives you permission to be exactly who you're designed to be. And I love that.
Oh.
Well, now I gotta try something.
I know, I'm so sorry. You're speaking like this, we don't want to interrupt.
No.
Just so you know, that was the lemon basil.
Oh yeah, let's bring out the.
I
And
mean,
what you rate it, or how would you do your
That's
rating?
good. Like I think it's a solid. I gotta taste the rest of them before I can rate. But right now, as far as a donut, that's like a 6.
Out of 10.
Yeah.
6 out of 10. Okay.
Okay. So
Solid donut, but
I'm a projector.
Projector.
So what does this mean for me?
Yes. So with Jen and then myself being a manifester, our energies. Well, let's talk about projector first. So you're meant to be our guide and our advisor and like the next new leader of this world. We're starting to see kind of crumble, but we're gonna be reinventing lots of things. And then for me, but your energy is just. It's not as great as the others because as generators, you're not meant to. You're supposed to work a little bit and then rest a lot.
I love this.
I know.
Sorry guys, jobs taken.
Yeah. And then myself as a manifester, I really get more creative bursts. So I'm in a creative burst and then rest quite a bit. So anyways, manifesting generator, multi-passionate type. So if you feel like you're that way, you may be a manifesting generator. That's okay.
Rachel, can you explain, I would love to be able to share kind of how this group came together and what some of our intentional steps were to learn more about one another and how we as an NPD collaborative truly came to be who we are today as a group. And Rachel's expertise in guidance and human design was really instrumental in learning more about one another. Can you share how we approach that?
Yes. So last year was the first time we met everybody in person. Well, I think we've met each other, but all together in a room. And we wanted to be really intentional about spending some time getting to know one another. And one of the ways that we decided to do that was learning about each other's human design. You know, what are our profiles, our personalities, what's our energy type, what are
Learning
the,
more about ourselves.
and ourselves, all of that self-awareness, which as we get to talking about more about belonging, I was thinking more about, of course I can't not think about Brene Brown when I think about belonging, but something I was refreshing just this morning on the way here, and she talked about the belonging is really that belonging to ourselves. So when you can be yourself and true to yourself in a room, that's more belonging versus the fitting in is the opposite of that. And so I was thinking about that, like that's very interesting, because I think it can be very hard when you can be a chameleon, and she says that's her, I feel that way too, which that's actually, there's parts in human design that we didn't even dig into that show through, like you're good at really adapting to other people's energy, but really how do you stay true to yourself and authentic and come into the room as yourself, because we need you to be yourself.
It requires some vulnerability.
Absolutely,
right?
yes. So we did that. We spent some time just really getting to know one another and talking through, just all the things and how it's, relatable, how we're alike and how we're different, how the strengths that come into play, the challenges we even have, because we, I love that about astrology and human design. We can't really talk about just all the great things because there's challenges, and we are all faced that too. And but I think it helps us grow and learn and know that, okay, we can be resilient in our own realm on the challenges we may face. Anything else you'd add?
I think it's interesting, like again, diversity that's in this room, because it's diversity of thought with a common mission. And I think that often when we think about belonging, you kind of think everybody has to think the same, everybody has to feel the same. But I think that that is not the case. I think it's that sense of belonging is, like you said, Rachel, is being allowed to be yourself in a room.
Yeah.
And that authenticity you're allowed to bring in, people saying, hey, that's not my cup of tea, but I appreciate your thoughts and your perspective on things. And I think that we've worked hard as a group to try to, navigate that and whatnot. So I think we've had, I'd say, what is it? Is it Tanner's? Who's the one who does the forming, storming, norming?
Yeah,
The stages of group development.
Yeah, the stages of group development. I think we've gone through that, because that's the whole theory of that. But I think that our personalities and our common mission have allowed us to be able to have tough conversations and navigate those. So that's one of the things I appreciate most about this group. Tuckman,
that's it. Tuckman.
The T.
I think that was on our NPD certification exam, so
definitely.
don't tell anybody I got that wrong.
We'll link to the resource.
They're gonna take my certification back.
I have to say one more thing though about the human design experience for all of us, and learning not just about ourselves but of each other. Something that Rachel created that I know took so much time, and I still find it so useful. I actually almost brought them with me, the staff cards that you made.
Yes.
She printed and made cards for each and every one of us, so we all had copies, and they're laminated and they're on a little ring, and we can quickly refer to those as we're navigating conversation or trying to learn and understand more about one another, and it serves as that consistent resource to just have that insight. Whereas if trying to recall, I remember Tabitha and Vanessa are manifesting generators because that's something that we share a commonality with, but then I need to refresh. Jen is a projector. What does that mean? How is that different? So it's been really helpful to have that resource, even though it's not something that we use every single time we get together. It's there, and I just appreciate you putting the time and effort.
It's really fun.
Well, that's an actionable strategy, I think, which is what most of our listeners are kind of looking at, is this isn't something we did as a group that is isolated to us. These are things that you can do with your teams and groups that you want to work with to help to understand what those differences are, and just kind of the strengths that they add to the team, and to cultivate that sense of belonging on a team.
I think for me, one of my favorite things that we did was when we were talking about how we make decisions.
Yes.
And there are some of us that have gut reactions.
Yes.
And we need to go with that. Yep, me too. And then there are others that it's like you might have a gut reaction, but to truly make the best decision for you, you need to have that time to process. And that's something that I think I'm so happy that I learned about, because as someone who tends to feel it really strongly and then I know what I want to do, without that knowledge, I honestly probably would have been really frustrated at multiple times throughout our collaborative, where when I was in that moment of like, why can't we just move forward? It's like, oh, because it's not about me and how I respond, right? Like, yes, this is how I want to do it, but this is a collective group.
Yeah.
And so recognizing that it, just as much as I want people to honor how I respond, I need to honor how other people do it. And that's the best way forward for us. So I think that was, one of the things that I use most often in our groups is reminding myself, like, I need to take that step back, and just because I do it this way, we all might have a different way that we need to make our decisions. So
yeah, that's a great point, because even though both of you are manifesting generators and have sacral responses is what it's called, Tabitha has an emotional, they're called authority. So sacral authority, emotional authority, which I have an emotional authority, even being a different energy type, but we both have to have time to process, because our emotions, we're just emotional beings. So we're gonna have it really high and really low, and then it's like we need this almost neutral place before we're ready to maybe make a decision. And then Jen, you've got this splenic authority, which is like this inner knowing. It's not really necessarily a gut response, you just know, you just quick knowing.
And so for us, it's really taking that purposeful pause.
It is.
Before we really kind of commit and make a decision.
Yeah.
But I think you brought up a great point. This is an actionable strategy. Using Strength Scope, Strengths Finder, Human Design, really getting to know your team, so you can support one another and capitalize on each other's strengths.
Yeah.
To make big
builds
businesses.
that trust. For sure.
Well, and what is, so I think that's a good point, like to build that trust, but also to build belonging. But what is belonging? Like, what does that mean exactly? What does it mean to belong or to feel like you belong versus like fitting in, something like that? Like, what is the difference? Like, and I'm asking because I'm curious, because, you know, I think we hear about it all the time. And I know that the Surgeon General Guardian Prescription for America was based on the concept of belonging. So, I mean, what does that really mean, and where does that fit into healthcare, and specifically into healthcare education, right? Like with how we kind of fit in and belong, and how we can help others to feel like they belong. I think we need to start with kind of that definition of what that is.
So to help answer Jen and all of our questions about the definition of belonging, we asked a few of our listeners what their thoughts were.
I define belonging as feeling accepted and wanted in a group of people where I can be my authentic self and just kind of come as I am, strengths, weaknesses, and feel accepted.
So I'm defining belonging as someone or something of value. So inclusivity, but you can say belonging, but you really don't feel valued.
Yeah.
You could be in an environment and you're just there, you belong there, but you're not valued for your person and for what you bring to the table.
Belonging, I would define as being able to be your true self no matter what, and it's not even a question of having to act differently. You can just show up and be yourself no matter what.
I really think of belonging as that is the place where you can show up as yourself however you are that day, and trust that you will be heard and respected by the people around you. And from the context of healthcare education, I think one reason it's so important is that so often we get into groupthink.
Oh yeah.
And I think especially in education spaces when there is a right answer, but often that's built on so many assumptions and injustices that are just built into society, where you need people to have a safe space where they can say, that doesn't fit what I'm thinking, or I've had a different experience, and be comfortable sharing that. I think that's why it's so important in healthcare, because without belonging where people feel like they can speak up and that it's safe to do so, at the end of the day, your colleagues and your patients pay for it.
Yeah, I think when I think about belonging, it's similar to where you are, is that whole authentic self, because and everybody's going to be shocked to hear this, I'm actually a huge introvert. So for me to be able to be in a space where I feel completely comfortable with the people I'm with, and I can be authentically myself, and in the education space where I can feel comfortable saying, I don't know, or be okay with being wrong, that is, I think a lot of pressure gets put on healthcare educators to always know the answer. And for me, that does kind of negate a sense of belonging, because it means if I don't know the answer, then I'm outside the circle of belonging. Whereas when people accept that maybe I don't know the answer, but hey, we'll find it together or something, that's when I feel a sense of peace and belonging in whatever situation that I'm in.
And you have to have those safe spaces with trust to be able to be
Yes.
vulnerable like that.
Can I share some notes? And I truly want to refer to my trusty paper that I have with me about Dr. Murphy's Parting Prescription for America. And this was a report that he published on his exiting terms as serving as the U.S. Surgeon General. And it was very powerful, very, very moving to reflect on the key components that he highlighted within. Because what he summarized is a call to action for a solution to solve the problem of disconnect. And at the root of that is this overwhelming sense of loneliness and ultimately not feeling a sense of belonging. So how do you bridge that gap? How do you reach that point of feeling like you belong, whether it's personally, professionally, wherever you identify a sense of belonging? And what it really comes down to is a sense of community. And if you were to reflect on our history as a society, and just even like within the last 5 years, the pandemic truly isolated us in ways that this generation, many generations, have never experienced before. And virtual, quote, air quotes, connection is how we survived to establish those connections with one another. So my point being is we were forced to not connect face to face in a way that was most meaningful for us. And now here we are 5 years after the start of the pandemic, and we're finding this still sense of complacency, if you will, behind a screen, and inability to connect face to face. So I even think that relates to us being intentional to have this podcast conversation today is a strategy to help mitigate loneliness. It's a strategy to cultivate a sense of belonging. And even as I look around the room and I'm able to look each and every one of you in the eyes, how different that is from, looking at each other on our Hollywood square tiles in a virtual setting. And this is a powerful moment, whether or not we consciously or subconsciously recognize that. This is a simple way to reestablish connection. So the sense of community piece that he really stressed in this report is based on 3 core pillars, and he phrases it as a triad of fulfillment. And those 3 pillars are relationships, service, and purpose. So how are those related? How do you define those personally? How do you define those professionally? Where are those moments of overlap? How are we intentionally creating relationships, intentionally cultivating service, and creating a sense of purpose? And there's an opposition to this triad of fulfillment versus a triad of success that is built on wealth, fame, and power. You can have all of those things and not have fulfillment.
Yeah.
And that is where, you start to see these imbalances. And I personally, I'll share, I reflect on myself of how I have always had this stay humble, hustle hard mentality. And I think I've even shared it on a podcast before. Like, I have a placard on my desk that says that. And it is, you know, I am seeking to succeed. I also know this about myself from an Enneagram 3 perspective, just knowing who I am. And drivers, that's really something I struggle with, is where is that balance to optimize my well-being in a place of, I'm operating from a place of joy and purpose versus I want to be successful. I'm doing this because I feel like I have to achieve X, Y, Z. So can I bypass grabbing one? Because I think this would be a great segue to one of the questions I put in the bucket. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm curious, how do you all define community? What does that mean for you professionally, personally?
So before you hear from us, let's go back to our listeners and hear from them and how they define community.
Community feels like a shared group of people with similar values, goals, that want to support each other and to create a safe space where we can improve lives and express ourselves creatively and come together and not feel so isolated and have someone to lean on.
I think community is dynamic. It changes based on what your needs are and what's needed of you.
Yeah.
There's communities within communities within communities.
Yes.
And it's not necessarily a physical space, but it can be a very personal space as well, and it can be a conceptual space.
Yeah.
But so community is dynamic, and it can change based on the minute of the day of the time.
Yeah.
I would define community as a place where everyone supports each other and can rely on each other. When people need help, you can just automatically rely on those people without even having to ask. People just show up for you.
So I'm really the introverted extrovert. I have this introverted nature where I need to come, when we say home to yourself or back to yourself, like I need solitude to get clarity. That's probably some of the emotional weighting too. But the other part of my profile in human design is a 4, and that's all about community. And I don't always recognize that I'm building a community around me, whereas Vanessa has 4 as her first member, and that's more of the conscious side of community, so she's also got that in her, but not that we don't all have that, of course, but just within our personalities, like moving things forward is to be done through a sense of this community. But I've had to really think about community when maybe I want to stay isolated because I'm like, okay, I'm comfortable just being by myself and doing things by myself, but then I'm reminded when I'm in a space like this, just the natural energies that flow, like you were saying, Jill, like even being able to like I know we see each other, but it's different. It's just this different feeling of energy that's being exchanged, and just it's again finding maybe another word of balance, like you were saying, but a balance of like being by myself, but then being in community. But I think it's multiple communities. I don't have a huge friend group, but I'm okay with that because I prioritize quality over quantity. Can I tell a quick story? Okay.
That's what we're here for.
Okay, so listening to another podcast on the way here. It's a 4-hour flight, so I had plenty of time to listen to podcast episodes. My favorite. And I was listening to Mel Robbins. Do you guys ever listen to Mel Robbins? Yes. So it's an older episode, but I was just looking again about belonging and connection and community, and she was talking about the Harvard study of adult development. Have you all heard of this study? Mm-hmm. Okay, it's the longest running study of human happiness. Or about happiness in humans, and it's still going on, and they're starting to have enough data. I think it's been going on like 80 some years. We'll definitely link it in the show notes because it's great study. But they've been studying these families and groups of people for 80 plus years, and they found the #1 predictor for well-being and happiness is connection. And I'm like, of course. And we're not surprised, right, at all. And so I was listening to this episode with Mel Robbins, and she referred to that, and it was all about making these warm relationships. And I'm like, warm, what does that mean? And so she went on to describe warm relationships are really like making that initiating conversation with a stranger, because you never know the trajectory it's going to take in your life. So I just decided to work up some courage this morning, and I said hi to the person next to me, which I shared that story earlier, but her first time at this convention. But who knows what kind of connection that might lead down the road. But it could be your next best friend, could be your next romantic partner, just partner in general, business partner. And that just gave me a lot of courage to think about. It's a practice sometimes. I think because we're so immersed in social media and technology, it's becoming more and more hard to initiate those conversations with people. And I think our younger generations too. That it's becoming more of like we have to practice having these connections and being social almost. But it doesn't have to be like, okay, now we are best friends and we're gonna do all these, things. It doesn't have to be 0 to 60, right? Or all or nothing. But maybe it's just hey, how are you? Or just even saying hello. She says that's kind of that first step you can take. So just really timely with everything we're talking about. And I thought that was interesting. So my goal is one time a day it'll be easy here because we're with our people, but one time a day just to initiate that conversation with somebody, and who knows what that'll turn out.
There's a lot of overlap with some of the strategies Dr. Murphy outlined in his parting prescription as well. And I have my notes here. From an individual level, take one action a day to either help someone or have an intentional conversation with a peer or with a child, whomever. And that is one simple thing that you can do to make that ripple effect that can truly impact your experience, whomever you're engaging with, for their experience, to create that connection.
Yeah.
There's one other, in terms of from a health and well-being standpoint and why this is really important for healthcare specifically, I did not call out the fact that loneliness and the health consequences associated with loneliness, what he indicated in his report, the lack of social connection and loneliness increases the risk of premature death as much as smoking up to 15 cigarettes a day. It's linked to higher rates of depression and anxiety and even heart disease and dementia.
That's what that study said too. There's so many effects on your physical well-being too, that it's not a matter of like, why does this matter? It absolutely matters. Even if you just think from a physical health perspective.
Yeah.
That is really interesting.
It definitely matters. I was at the ICE exchange last winter, and Shasta Nelson, a keynote speaker, was there, and she was talking on frientimacy and relationships, and she's done a lot of work on that. And of course, she talked about kind of similar to the pillars you mentioned, but her pillars for relationships were you need consistency. So maybe you do start small, but you grow over time there. You need positivity and then vulnerability, which obviously you have to have trust for that foundation. But, and how beneficial having friends in the workplace are.
Oh yeah, we spend so much time there.
So, and then it even has not only obviously benefits with productivity, patient outcomes, but just the general health of your healthcare workers.
Big time.
I think as you guys have been talking, one of the things that has really struck me that I think I've felt for a while is one of the key pieces of belonging and community is that it requires being intentional, and it's not, it kind of reminds me, right, there are,
it's not passive.
Right, it's not just I show up to the meetings or I'm a part of 13 different groups. If you aren't actively engaged and involved with them, it doesn't matter how many things you can write down that you're involved with, right? If you aren't being intentionally present when you're there, versus it's kind of that same quality versus quantity thing, right? Like I might have 2 or 3 things that I really care about and communities that I'm really intentional about growing, and I put a lot of time and energy into those. And I have to recognize in myself that means I don't have time maybe for these other things. Not that I don't want to do them or that they aren't important, but where am I going to prioritize? And for me, I think it's just the idea of that you have to be present. It's not just things on a checkbox or a checklist, but that requires intentionality and time and effort and energy to put yourself out there and to be a part of that, which I think oftentimes we're all really busy, right? That can sometimes feel hard to do, to find that time and energy to be vulnerable and to try something new and to put effort in when you don't necessarily know are other people going to do it too. And I think that's something I've loved about our group. We all came into it not really knowing where it was going to go, what we were going to do, but we all decided like this feels worth exploring, whatever shape that takes. And we, from the very beginning, were very intentional about how we set up our meetings, how we learned about each other, had a lot of, sometimes challenging conversations about what next steps were and how we wanted to grow together. And I think that in my mind, this is a great community that I've really come to rely on and trust all the people in here. Even though I knew many of you prior to forming this group, I feel like I know everyone so much better now on a very different level than before. It was maybe more professional, transactional, where now it just feels very different.
I think too, and I think I get this perspective, I'm a military spouse, so I look at community as very fluid, and I look at my life as a book, and some people are chapters in my book, and that doesn't mean they're any more or less important than people who make it through the whole book, who are core characters who will be standing around my deathbed, because they all have influenced the trajectories of the next chapters that I do. So I think it's important to keep in mind for anybody who's thinking, oh my God, I've got to go find my community right now and have a sense of belonging, and it's going to be these people. It's these people during these certain seasons of your life. And I think you have to give yourself that permission of also not forcing community, but letting it to happen organically. So Rachel, the girl you talked to on the plane, may be your next best friend, your next business partner, but also don't stalk her because, she may not want to be.
Yeah.
But I think that's the point, is you just never know, and you just kind of have to open yourself up to the universe and also be accepting of, okay, no, this isn't going to be my community. What else is out there?
Because don't let that stop you from seeking out other.
Because that could happen, right? If you're like, oh, this isn't going to work out, and I'm just going to isolate myself. No, you've got to continuously put yourself out there. I think about every time I land at a new duty station, again, because I'm very introverted, and we are in a very extroverted community. My husband is in the aviation community in the Navy, and that's a tight-knit community. But sometimes I feel very comfortable when I'm in a group, because it's just the people who are there who kind of are more accepting of the weirdness that is me. And then sometimes I am sitting there like, okay, how much longer do we have? I gotta go. Like, I just feel so completely uncomfortable. And that's not on the other people. It's just that sense of connection that can't be forced. It is a commonality or whatever energy that's going on. So I think I wanted to say that because I don't want people who are listening to be like, oh my God, what if I don't get this sense of community? What is it? That I think it's something that's going to happen organically, but as Rachel said, it's not going to happen at all if you don't put yourself out there.
Right.
You have to have that consistency to build those relationships.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, like, just sharing vulnerably, like, this is vulnerable, but I initiated the conversation. We walked together the baggage claim, and that was kind of it. And I was reflecting on this, and I'm like, okay, past Rachel would have felt very hurt and rejected, but I, it's part of just growing and learning and practicing self-compassion and providing that kindness to yourself is there's probably a million other things happening, right, in this person's mind, and it's their first time, and calming the inner critic in my mind. But that was an example of, okay, I'm gonna put myself out there, there's a real fear around rejection and hurt, and not, maybe even embarrassed, like, why did I even say anything? Oh my goodness. But it's kind of getting back up on that horse and like, okay, I'm just gonna.
But she also may see you a couple days from now,
we don't know.
And be like, oh my God, thank God, somebody I know and can connect with, and whatnot. And you may be able to reset her trajectory.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. You never know the ripple effect.
Yeah, I agree.
The ripple effect too is kind of what Mel Robbins was talking about. Like, just you never know the impact you're gonna make, even if it's just for 10 minutes to walk to the baggage claim, and then that's it.
You might have been a paragraph in her story.
Yeah, yes.
She may be sharing with someone right now how excited she is, and because she had that welcome.
I found like I heard I'm gonna find my people here. This is great. Yes. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I'm like, okay, ooh, this is hard, but it's okay, and then, okay, it's still hard, but it's still okay, and not like, oh, everything's gonna be great, because it's still hard. I mean, we're human, right? It's still gonna hurt a little bit. You reframe it like that. Like, we never know what's gonna happen.
Well, and how well can you get past that when you walk from the airport, you come back here, and you come into the lobby, and you see 4 people who are essentially just rushing to hug you and welcome you and are excited to be with you. So those feelings are, while they are uncomfortable and vulnerable and icky feeling, are so transient if you allow them to be, and you remember, okay, well, this situation happened, but I've got 4 people who love me who are 5 minutes down the road, and I'm gonna spend the afternoon in my pajamas eating donuts with them. So life is gonna be great again. Yeah,
definitely.
This was such a fun episode to record. We hope you all enjoyed it, whether you are listening or watching the video. We hope you had some laughs along with us. It was so nice to be in the same room together, to feel that sense of community and belonging like we talked about. I wanted to go over a few of the resources that we discussed throughout the episode. The first thing we talked about was the human design system, and you can actually go and get your free chart on my website. This is Rachel. If you go to rachelkelter.com, and there should be a link to create your chart, and you can go in there for free and get what energy type you are and your profile or personality, and let us know what is your energy type in human design in your profile, and maybe it's one of the same as ours. We also talked about Strength Scope, which is another version of identifying your strengths. We discussed the U.S. Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy's parting prescription for America, and we'll put a link to that. We also discussed the Harvard study of adult development, as well as Tuckman's stages of group development. We mentioned briefly Shasta Nelson's website and information on building relationships. And then we ended with the Mel Robbins Podcast and talking about a few of her episodes, but the entire podcast is one we definitely recommend. So we hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have any further questions or comments on belonging or community, please reach out to us at our email, disruptordiariespodcast@gmail.com. You can listen to our podcast series by subscribing to Disruptor Diaries, Healthcare Education Innovation Unleashed on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and iHeartRadio. Thank you so much again, and we'll talk to you next month.
Disruptor Diaries disseminates educational best practices from around the globe to cultivate inclusive learning environments. We'd love to hear from you and encourage you to recommend topics or guests you would like for us to explore on future episodes. Contact us at disruptordiariespodcast@gmail.com. If you like what you hear, please leave a 5-star rating on your preferred podcast platform, as well as a review. And if you feel so inclined, please share with your friends and colleagues on social media. Be sure to tag Disruptor Diaries hosts when you do. These ratings and reviews will help us grow this platform and extend our reach. As NPD practitioners, we know our strength is in our sense of community. So, the more you share Disruptor Diaries, the more valuable this podcast resource will be. Thanks for listening to this episode of Disruptor Diaries. We'll be back to discuss another hot topic next month.